everyone, welcome back to another episode of Maintenance with Mike. Today we're going to be doing a standard oil change on most modern vehicles. This example will be on a Toyota 4Runner, but the general principles apply for changing oil yourself. We'll go over a bunch of tips as far as looking in the owner's manual and checking on how many liters of oil your vehicle takes with an oil filter change. And doing some research on your own to find out what make and model of oil filter is required for your vehicle, just as a safeguard or a double check when you go to pick up one from your local supplier, such as Lordco or Napa or Walmart or wherever you get your oil filters from. So, all right, once again, step-by-step procedure on changing your oil in most modern day vehicles. So let's get started. Okay, so we just grabbed the owner's manual out of the glove box for this vehicle. There is two engine types here. So if you don't know which engine type is yours, you would have to contact the manufacturer. But for this application, it's the 1GR FE. So it says with filter and without filter. So with filter is 5.2 liters. Without a filter change, it's only 4.9. So we need 5.2 liters of oil with a filter change. So we picked up a 5 liter jug of 5W30.
Okay, so we're underneath the vehicle here. You need to test fit a socket on the drain plug to make sure that that it fits, knowing whether it's metric or standard type. And if I can get a better picture here, there's the drain plug. So we're going to crack that off and put a little plastic container underneath there and let that oil drain out. So let me grab a container and we'll pull this drain plug out. You want to light underneath here so you can see where your drain plug is. You want to position a catch pan underneath to grab all that oil when it drains out. And I've also got a bit of a mat here that also gives me to keep the oil off the floor. I can just easily wipe up any spills on here. So anyway, let's pull the drain plug and we'll get some oil flowing here. So once you crack it loose, put your pan underneath, and there's usually a washer on the bolt, so with your finger make sure you're grabbing the washer and holding on to that so that you don't lose it. And here comes oil. So there you have it. So we're going to let that drain completely, and we're going to go up top now and spin the oil filter off a little bit, just to allow the flow to come, everything to come out from the engine, opening up, or you could take the cap off as well. But we need to spin the filter off anyway, so we're going to show you how to do that next. Wipe the drain plug off, check for any iron filings. Sometimes they're magnetic. And get it all clean to put back on.
Okay, we're back up top here now. So specific to this particular vehicle, the Toyota 4Runner, the oil filters are actually mounted upright, and there's a little collar around the oil filter to catch all the oil in it, and there's a little hole in the bottom. So what I've got is an old Castrol 1 liter container with the lid. We put this underneath the hole of the collar that catches the oil. Then we crack the filter and it fills the collar. And empties all the oil into the container. So we just spin that out, let that drain. Loosen the cap as well, the fill cap. Will also help aid in having the oil come through the engine and drain out. So that's kind of it all draining out there. We're going to capture all that. And then we'll actually pull this filter right off and recycle it. We'll show you how to fit a new filter and what to check for when you take the filter off. There's definitely a pro tip here that you don't want to miss. I have done this once and learned my lesson. So we'll get right back to you as soon as the oil is all drained out here. And we're ready to put the new filter on. Okay, so the first tip here that I was suggesting before we paused there for a second was, I've had an experience where this rubber O-ring that is supposed to stay on the filter has actually stuck and stayed mated to the actual engine or the field filter location. So effectively what happened was this peeled off from heat, I guess, or whatever, and stayed stuck to the motor. I spun it off, it was dark, I was young, didn't really know what to check for, and spun the new filter on. But in doing that, I put two rubber filter gaskets back to back. The one was still stuck to the block. I spun the new one on with the new O-ring, and as soon as it built up pressure, it leaked. So that's something to check for, is make sure that this O-ring doesn't stay stuck to the engine and that it actually comes off with the filter, because the new filter has an O-ring on it already. So what you want to do is, once you've pulled the filter right off, you want to wipe the mating surface where the new filter is going to go to. Make it nice and clean in there. And then what we want to do is open up a new jug of oil, and we'll get a little bit and rub it on the seal. So let me grab that stuff and I'll be right back. Okay, so just to recap, we've pulled the filter off. We've pulled the drain plug. The drain plug is still out. It's still draining. We've loosened off the fill cap. So we have our new filter and our new jug of oil. So the new filter, once you open it up, you'll see it's got an O-ring on it. So we open the new jug of oil and we shake a little bit of oil into this cap. You want to use your finger to get a little bit of that new oil and wipe a good amount of that oil onto this O-ring. Need a little bit more here. Make sure it's nice and coated. Okay? And then we simply, without cross-threading this, we just turn it nicely, spin it down till it mates to the surface. Once it's tight, just hand tight. So you can loosen it off yourself, like that. There you have it. So you basically, we've just set that new filter in that collar. You could basically turn it off by hand, is what you want. Remove the paper towel that was blocking the little, in this case, the little part that holds the collar, that holds the oil. Not everybody's going to agree with my next step here, but for me, it's something that I like to do just for peace of mind. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a funnel on here. And we're going to put in maybe a quarter of a liter or eighth of a liter of new oil into here. Then we're going to get underneath with the drain plug and we're going to watch the oil drain out until it turns clear. As soon as it's clear, it's now increased the volume in that pan by adding oil and pushed out the old oil till you see the new oil when it runs clear. As soon as it runs clear, you can put the drain plug in and tighten it up. That's my preference. Not everybody will, maybe that's overkill. And they'll just want to add the 5 liters as specified in the manual now. But let's do it my way, and I'll show you how to do that. We don't want to over torque the drain plug. I think the best way to describe how tight to put the drain plug on, if this was mounted to the drain plug, you want to tighten it by holding the 3/8 drive socket, holding it to the socket at the top. You don't want this much torque on that drain plug. You want to hold it up here and just snug it up with your wrist, not to over tighten it. Stripping the drain plug is a bad thing. So let's add a bit of oil here, and then we will jump underneath and put the drain plug in once that turns clear. So there we go, dumped a bunch of oil in there. Let's get underneath here with our drain plug. And you can see the oil is a bit dirty still, but it's almost getting clear now. I'm hoping you can see that with the camera, but I think we're safe to put the plug in now. And again, you just thread that in by hand first, and then wipe your hand off the rag. We can probably now push this oil container a little bit out of the way and wipe off around the bolt. We'll get our socket set and we will snug that up. There. That's it. It's as tight as it has to be. I'll wipe around it. Make sure there's no mess of oil for the dirt to stick to. Keep it nice and clean. There you go. There's the drain plug done, installed. Okay, so we've installed the drain plug now after adding a bit of oil and letting it turn clear. The filter, the new oil filter is installed. The drain plug's on. Now we need to add oil. So this is a 5 liters. We put a little bit through already, so it's safe to say that we can add this whole jug. Once we finish adding all this, you got to take the mental note of, okay, drain plug's on, it's torqued, oil filter's on, it's torqued, put the cap on the fill hole, for the engine. And then what you want to do is you want to start the engine and let it run for 30 seconds to a minute, just to fill the oil filter, and then turn it off. Let it sit for a while, and then check the actual measurement of how much oil is in the engine using the dipstick. And confirm that you are within the 2 marks or at the top portion of the 2 marks is what it should be. The manual said 5.1 liters. We put in 5, maybe slightly less than 5. So we may have to add a tiny bit, but we'll confirm that once we fire it up and the oil filter gets filled and the engine warms up a little bit and circulates all the oil around. We'll check it. Okay, so let's just let this rest of this oil in this container dump in here, and then we will put the cap on and we'll fire it up. Okay, so it doesn't hurt to do one more mental note before we fire up the engine. Go underneath, make sure the drain plug's in and tightened. Wipe all the residual oil from around there so dirt doesn't get attracted to it. Check the filter. You've put the new filter on. It's hand tightened. It's seated properly on either this collar or on some vehicles on the engine block. You've added the specified manufacturer recommended amount of oil, in this case 5 liters. We're going to put the cap back on, the filler neck. So that's tight, the new filter is on, the drain plug's in, and we've added the specified amount of oil. Now it's safe and clear to start up the vehicle and let it run for 30 seconds to a minute. So let's do that. Okay, so we had the vehicle running for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 minutes or so. We brought it back inside. We've shut it off. We've left the oil settled in the engine. So we'll let it sit for another 5 minutes off. And here's the dipstick on this particular model. So we're gonna, with a clean rag, we're gonna pull this out. We're gonna wipe it off. Make sure the little O-ring at the top's nice and clean. We're gonna put it back in. And then we're gonna pull it out and take a reading. And there's 2 dots on this one, and we're almost at the bottom part of the second dot. So maybe 1/8 of an inch low. So in my books, that's fine. It's between the 2 dots. It's basically got, 5 liters of oil in it. Calls for 5.1 with a with a filter change. So that's pretty close. I don't know if you can tell by the video, you can see it just below that second dot. So we're good. So wipe it off, dipstick goes back in, and then I would do a once around. This is in, filter's on, filler portion, cap is on there. Check the drain plug once more, make sure there's no leaking around that, and you're good. So there we go. Standard oil change for most vehicles, domestic or import. Same principles apply. This is specific to Toyota 4Runner, but the same principles apply. The oil filter may be in a different location. It may be mounted sideways onto a block in most cases. So same thing, you spin it off, make sure the gasket comes with it, the O-ring. Spin the new one on after lubricating the O-ring. Make sure it seats properly, just hand tight. And then filling with the amount of fluid is the same for most vehicles, it would say in the manual. So specified fluid type, filter type, My little pro tip there, where you add a little bit of extra oil and wait till it runs clear, that's just me being me. You don't have to do that at all. But yeah, thanks again for watching another episode of Maintenance with Mike. A standard oil change in a vehicle, specifically this one, the Toyota 4Runner. If you find this helpful or you like watching these videos, subscribe to our channel. Share them with a friend or family member, and you'll get notified of new videos as we post them. Thanks again. Cheers.